Hey everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. This is the first in the tea series. I'm going to be talking about black tea. So, black tea is what most people think of when they actually think of tea in the West. It's easily the most popular variety. And by variety, I actually don't mean species or anything like that. Really, all true tea comes from the Camellia sinensis plant. What I mean is that the way the tea is processed makes it turn black. And in China, it's actually called red tea because the tea itself, if you pour it in, like, say, a little shallow white porcelain cup, like what the Chinese are used to, and not add anything to it, it kind of has a red color to it more so than a black color. So that's why, and we actually call it that in the West because the leaves are shriveled and black. And the reason why they're shriveled and black is they're fully oxidized. That's literally what makes black tea black tea. It's just tea leaves that have been oxidized. And really, how that happens is it's a perfectly natural process. All the other forms of tea, the oxidative process has been arrested by severe heat that breaks up the enzymes that cause that process to take place in the first place. So, why is black tea so much more popular in the West? And the big reason for that is twofold. One, it's what arrived in Europe in the late medieval period, and well, you actually, I guess you could argue really more the Renaissance, but it arrived in Europe, and green teas didn't last very long in those shipping containers. The sea air wasn't so good for them, so black tea survived the voyage better. Well, incidentally, in certain royal courts, namely Spain, it was discovered that they just really liked this caffeinated beverage. There was one particular princess whose name escapes me at the moment, but she decided to start having tea with her friends at a set time of day, and she would add sweeteners and sometimes milk to cut the more tannic, astringent quality that black tea is sort of known for. And that sort of became the precursor for a lot of the tea culture that exists in Europe, including the English high tea, which is what I think, at least in America, we just sort of associate tea with. We associate it with, English style teacups, a splash of milk, a bit of sugar or honey, and of course, sandwiches or cookies, aka biscuits. But it's enjoyed in numerous other ways around the world. In fact, two of my favorite black teas, Moon and Lapsang Souchong, are best enjoyed unsweetened and just completely on their own at a hot temperature. Lapsang Souchong is notably unique because it's actually smoked under pine fires. And the reason why you shouldn't be too shocked, since it does originate in China, is that basically what happened was some folks had some that hadn't oxidized, took it to the market, realized nobody's going to want partially oxidized black tea, tried to get away with smoking it in order to make it look like it was fully oxidized. And people actually liked the flavor. So it was actually an attempt of like basically a knockoff, but people enjoyed it and it became its own variety of tea called Lapsang Souchong, and it's like drinking a fireplace in a good way. It's one of my favorite wintertime teas for that reason. Black teas, in terms of like growing it, in terms of cultivation, they are very commonly found in China, but the most popular varieties are found in India and Sri Lanka. Ceylon is a very delicate, for example, black tea. It tastes lighter and in many cases looks lighter in color, despite being oxidized, than a lot of green teas. It's sometimes referred to as the champagne of teas for that very reason. And Moon is a Chinese black tea that is extremely strong and full-bodied. The closest thing I can compare it to flavor-wise would be a dry, full-bodied wine like a Cabernet or a Merlot or a Shiraz. And I realize that's a stretch because we are talking about two very different products. I'm just saying that it's the closest thing I can compare it to if you've never had that particular variety of black tea. So what's interesting to me about the relationship of black tea in Europe is that it didn't really exist, for the most part, with American culture for a long time. Americans actually, we preferred to get our teas not from India and Sri Lanka, which is one of the other reasons why black teas are popular in Europe, especially Britain, but we actually preferred tea from China. And in the United States, up until the advent of World War II, oolongs, greens, whites, and blacks were all kind of enjoyed almost equally. And then because of Japan invading China, the supply got cut off and people just sort of lost interest. That's unironically the deal. It's not the Boston Tea Party. That's not the reason why Americans don't drink tea. It was actually because it's amazing how in just one generation they just kind of forgot. In fact, black tea is not the traditional Southern sweet tea. It's green tea. But that being said, that's how I grew up. I grew up drinking black tea. That was just extremely normal. Coffee is popular in the South, but tea is also very popular, not just sweet and iced, but also in hotter varieties. I've known tons of like full blown, what an outsider would call a hillbilly stereotype men, who they wake up and they put on their coveralls or their overalls depending, and they have biscuits, which are American biscuits, like scones with honey and country ham and all that. And instead of a big mug of coffee, like the stereotype, which is warranted, they'll have a nice cup of orange pekoe instead. So it is more common than pop culture would illustrate. But yeah, I think that's all I got for black tea. But yeah, the bottom line is enjoy it however you enjoy it. But black teas, if you're only drinking them with sugar and milk, you're kind of missing out. I recommend experimenting and seeing what it tastes like without those things. And I also suggest experimenting beyond blends, which is what we commonly have in the West. Try a completely pure tea, Ki-Moon, Lapsang Souchong, Ceylon, etc. Like, share, subscribe, keep asking questions. Bye.